Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Happy Monday, everybody. It's another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin. I'm back this week.
Depressing Ask Mike, coming off a bad loss.
I know.
We'll try to get through it.
It's a depressing one, but we have a lot of questions this week, Mike.
Isn't it interesting they ask more questions when you lose than when you win?
That is kind of interesting. We have a lot to get to, so we are going to roll right into this one. Marty Bird's Proxy wants to know, how does this keep happening? This is multiple times this year that this team is obviously not prepared to play and starts playing when it has to. This time, it was too late.
You know, I thought Sam Pittman gave a good explanation. He basically said that he had more seniors on last year's team, super seniors, and they kind of provided leadership. So that might have been some of it. But I do think it's unfair to characterize the entire team as being unprepared to play. The offensive line was unprepared because they faced something they hadn't faced before, a reaction or a scheme on the part of the defense to spin out of blocks and use its quickness to penetrate. And they hadn't dealt with that before. They were prepared for it in practice, but practicing against a team that does that and practicing against your scout team as opposed to the real team is not always the same thing. KJ Jefferson gets a pass from me. He was out almost all the week, not practicing. He did some things, but he didn't throw the ball. I think he was probably sick a little bit too. I think he got off to a slow start, but then played really well down the stretch. Receivers might have missed a few catches in the first quarter, but overall played really well, made some really good catches. A.J. Green had a great game running the ball. And the defense, they stopped those guys 3 straight times before finally giving up a touchdown. And it's hard to defend a team as good as they were, and that's part of the problem too, is these guys were better than most Razorback fans think. But it's hard to keep stopping a team when the offense is going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out.
It really is.
And then the defense came out and pitched a shutout in the second half. You can't do any better than that. So it's unfair to say the team was unprepared to play. There were certain guys on that team that were unprepared.
Yeah, and I think you also have to look at it. People forget very quickly that this was a Liberty team that was a top 25 team that has done really good things this season. We're so quick to forget that this team was tougher than people believe they were going into this one. Lamont 7906 wants to know, is loyalty over production the coach's biggest flaw? It seems no matter how bad players are playing, the coaches are not willing to have the next guy up attitude. Hornsby number should it have been called earlier in the third?
You know, that part of it is debatable. The only thing that I've said about that is probably looking back on it, at some point you watch KJ struggle a little bit. Maybe in the third quarter you bring Hornsby in and just run a series and see how it goes. If it goes well, you leave him in. If it doesn't, you bring KJ back into the game and maybe it motivates him. But I personally don't have a huge issue with what they did. Both coaches agreed that that's what they should do. And you can say they didn't know what they were doing, but I just think the difference between those two quarterbacks, even when KJ's having an off day, you just haven't seen Hornsby enough. And he played okay in certain situations against Mississippi State. That doesn't mean he was capable of coming in and changing this football game.
Yeah, and Sam Pittman also addressed today the comment he made after the game about, when somebody asked him, I think it was Alyssa who asked him, why didn't you put Hornsby in? He said, no, KJ's our guy, KJ's our guy. It wasn't.
He wasn't asking.
He
wasn't asking for permission.
Well, he also said that it wasn't because KJ wasn't playing well. He asked Briles that because he was concerned about his health.
Yeah.
Not concerned that he wasn't playing well, he was more concerned about his health. So
and Briles said he was okay.
And Briles said he was okay, exactly.
And he's okay today, apparently.
And he is okay today, apparently. That is the news that we got today at his press conference. Pat Boat asked, what in the world is going on? With Rocket struggling, why wasn't Green's number called more?
That's one valid criticism, one I made after the game, and one I believe, because when you look, I think what really happened there was, again, the way they were playing defense, the way their defensive linemen were spinning out, using their quickness to penetrate. I think when A.J. came into the game, he's got a different running style, and he was able to cut back inside some of that stuff, saw it better. And, I mean, the results are pretty easy to look at. I mean, he carried the ball 6 times, and 4 of those times he got a first down, and I mean a true first down. He ran for over 10 yards. So if in 4 of your 6 carries you're getting first downs in a game in which first downs are a problem, yeah, he should have played more. He averaged 9.5 yards a carry or whatever, and Rocket averaged 3 point something. So, we should have seen him more.
Yeah, definitely. Dr. Stark says, Pittman says every week they need to get penalties fixed. Can someone ask exactly what he's been doing to correct that?
I mean, that's so difficult to discuss because there are so many different kinds of penalties. If you were having the same kind of problem every week, but what does offensive holding, for instance, have to do with false starts?
Yeah.
So in this game, they had 3 false starts. Okay. False starts are usually something you emphasize when you're going on the road, playing in a loud place like Alabama or someplace like this. When you're at home, I can't blame the coaches for not saying, hey, don't false start. And they just did. I think what happened to the offensive line is those guys got frustrated. They were dealing with a situation that they hadn't seen before, and I think they got a little antsy. These guys were quick. And when the other defensive linemen are that quick, you're moving quick. You're kind of pushing yourself early. And I think that's what caused it. I don't think it's a result of coaches not preparing them not to false start.
I think you're exactly right on that, Mike. And Pittman even said, those guys, that offensive line did look out of sync. All 5 guys have to play together, and if they're not, that's when you get something like what happened on Saturday. Yeah. So I think it's a question of also being a little bit out of sync as well, right? And how do you correct that in practice? Is that a mindset thing? Hogblitz says Coach Pittman has shown the willingness to get rid of assistant coaches that he believes are not performing to expectations. Does the same hold true with the coordinators? Does he have the capability of firing a coordinator, in parentheses, buddy, for the sake of a program?
The only way we're ever going to know the answer to that question if he does it, he's not going to announce it. Hey, I'm Sam Pittman, and I'm telling you I will fire either one of these guys even though I like it if I don't think they're getting – he's not going to say that. So the only way you're going to know an answer to that question is if he actually does it. There's no indication right now that he's about to fire somebody. And my guess is, since the question was asked, that if he had to fire either one of those guys, if he felt like he had to, he'd probably go to them and give them a chance to go find a job and wait a little while before he made the change, for optics, to give them a chance to get another job, not say you're just out. So that's my guess, but again, you're not going to know the answer to that question unless it happens.
And you don't think he would wait till after the season is over?
Yeah, I think he would,
well, yeah,
and I think he might wait even longer.
Yeah.
To give them a chance to get another job if that's what he decided to do, and then make the change later.
Yeah. Slobber Slob wants to know, were there any sightings of the O-line on Dixon on Friday night? Is that what O-line on Dixon on Friday night? Just trying to figure out what happened Saturday.
Yeah,
That's
I assume
quite funny.
this is sarcasm and look, it's probably sarcasm, but the reason that's a good question is there were posts on social media on our Pig Trail Nation site where they were basically implying these guys were partying on Dixon Street. For anybody that really believes that or put that on the internet and it's not sarcasm, they leave on a bus, they go up to a remote location in a hotel, they're sequestered in there, they can't go anywhere, they're not running around anywhere. They've got monitors all over the hallways of that hotel making sure they're not inside their rooms having a party. So, and then they get back on the bus the next day and come down and go through the hog walk. So for anybody that believes that they happen to lose that game by a razor-thin margin because they were partying the night before, get over yourself. Yeah. That's not what happened.
Yeah, definitely not. Pig Daddy Kane says, obviously, the worst loss in the Pittman era. What's wrong with our O-line? Were they getting owned? KJ looked hurt and off. Why not give Hornsby a series to shake things up? I feel like we are going to go into the Mizzou game with both teams at 5 wins, both needing the win for bowl eligibility.
Yeah, I don't know that we know that's the worst loss of the Pittman era. It's again, your optics, you as a fan. This is not a Power 5 conference school, but look at who their head coach is. Hugh Freeze, he beat Alabama twice when he was at Ole Miss, okay? He's a good coach. He has a good team. He had 3 quarterbacks that have played. All 3 have played well this year. He knows what he's doing. He recruits well. Just this team, Liberty, is going to go 11-1. I've looked at their schedule. There's nobody else going to beat them in the regular season. So what they're going to end up doing with an 11-1 record is they're going to play some team like Alabama, a team that doesn't quite make it into the playoffs, maybe is number 6, 7, or 8, and they're going to play a team like that. And then we'll see But if they pull off the win, what are you going to say then? I think that we all overlooked them. What shocked me was the fact that Liberty was such an underdog in that game. That shows that even Vegas didn't know what was going on.
No.
I reject the notion that Arkansas just went out there and tiptoed through the tulips. I've said the offensive line had a problem, and they had a problem because they encountered something that was different, and they didn't react to it very fast. But I don't think they were walking around with their heads in the clouds and didn't know what was happening. I think Liberty is that good. That's what I believe.
Yeah, and I said, I think it was on Friday night in our show, I even said, and I don't know if it was to you or Alyssa, but I was a little bit nervous about this game going into it, and everyone's like, why?
You did say that.
I just feel like 14.5-point favorites.
That was crazy.
That was crazy. That is bulletin board material
and
for
I
that
think
Liberty
that hurt
team.
the team. I think
Exactly.
it hurt Arkansas and helped Liberty.
Yep.
And I will say this, I think Liberty's better than Mississippi State, a team that beat Arkansas. I think Liberty could play Ole Miss very close. They couldn't beat LSU or Alabama. But there are plenty of SEC teams this team could beat. It kept popping up on the internet. This is the first time Liberty's ever beaten an SEC school.
Yeah.
If they had played more SEC schools this year, Arkansas is not the only one they would have beaten.
I agree. Mousetown says, I like to think that Hog fans are a little less over the top than other SEC fans, but after this weekend, I changed my mind. Fire Pittman, hire Hugh Freeze. Wow, the players were partying on Dixon Street Friday night. I've had it with social media. Another one that says the players were partying Friday night.
He clearly read this stuff. Look, I don't have any problem with people posting crazy stuff on the internet if it's an opinion. If you want to say fire Sam Pittman, hire Hugh Freeze, that's an opinion. You're able to post it. I don't believe in censoring people on the internet, on message boards, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. The only thing I would favor, and it's not going to happen, is that you should probably be fact-checked, which they do in politics but don't do in sports, if you put stuff that's incorrect. The partying on Dixon Street stuff, if it's not sarcasm and you're actually trying to make people believe that you saw them doing that, that's a lie, and a post like that shouldn't stand. But we see stuff like that all the time too. People get it wrong. So the only answer to that is don't pay any attention to it. It's not all fans. It's some fans. It's part of the fan base, and I deal with it so much I don't even hardly notice it.
Yeah, I mean, anyone's allowed to join Twitter and have an opinion, but you just got to filter out the not so truthful one. I think they're right. They should fact check sports.
Well, if it's
posts.
something really serious where it's just a lie and
Yeah.
it just makes somebody look bad, I think you shouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, I think so as well. Oklahog says Hog fans are up in arms with the whiff versus Liberty. Let's go forward. What was the greatest Hog recovery from a bad outing ever? Nut had some classic head-scratching moments where there was where we are a no-show 1 week and world beaters the next year. 2 under Nut. Arkansas got hammered by, that's your,
me.
I'm sorry, you put it in bold, Mike.
What's the matter with you? Yeah, year two under Houston Nutt, Arkansas lost to Ole Miss, I believe it was, and then they bounced back and beat number 3 Tennessee. That's a big turnaround.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's one under Nutt. I also remember Arkansas losing to the Citadel. Now, that's a loss. That's much worse than Liberty.
Ooh.
But Arkansas lost to the Citadel at home and got Jack Crow fired, and they were going into the SEC for the first time ever the next week, and everybody thought they were going to get killed because they had to go on the road to South Carolina. And it's not that winning that game was a shock, but they won it like 45-7. So that was quite a turnaround, from losing to the Citadel to going on the road in the SEC for the first time and winning a road game 45-7. That's a pretty big turnaround. And I'm sure there are others, but we don't have time to talk about all of them.
We've way too many questions. We still have more to get to. Edward Clutch says the dreaded 11 a.m. home games. Coach Pittman has said these games hurt when it comes to recruiting. Are we at the total mercy of ESPN when it comes to this? We haven't had a home SEC night game in almost 2 years, but we do have one coming up for Ole Miss.
Yeah.
So that's good.
You're basically at the mercy of ESPN. Yes, they're the guys that pay the money. They're the ones that are going to decide the schedule. And yes, they are going to try to get good matchups. In prime time, you want 2 good teams. You want to avoid 2 teams where at least one of them doesn't look interesting, or maybe both of them. So the answer to getting more prime time games is to be ranked consistently. You don't do it one year and not the next year, and then maybe in 2 more years you're ranked. You have to be kind of a perennial top 25, maybe top 15 team, and then you're going to get on prime time more often. It's pretty simple to figure that out.
Yeah, exactly. Cowhog32 asks, are there any seniors on offense that haven't utilized their COVID year that Pittman would ask to come back next year? I think Knox is for sure a possibility, but other than him, not sure who else would even qualify.
Yeah, in addition to Knox, I think Ricky Stromberg, the center, could come back. Jaden Hazelwood, the transfer from Oklahoma, and Matt Landers. I guess those 4 could come back. The only way we're going to know about that is you have to wait till the end of the year. Sam Pittman has a process on these portal guys, or the guys that are eligible, not the portal guys, but the guys that are eligible for the COVID 5th year. And what he does is he waits till the season is over. If he wants them back, he approaches them and said, if you'd like to come back, we'd like to have you back, but it's their decision. Now, you know, what they do is their own business. Now, it's interesting that I think we've got 1 more year of that extra COVID year.
Yes.
And
yes.
So next year will be the last year you can do that. Anybody that was a freshman in 2000, because they were on a team that kind of lost that year, that's the way they looked at it after it was done, they can have that extra year. But next year is the last year. After that, the COVID seniors will be gone.
Oh, yeah, that
process is over.
That'll be interesting. Dr. Stark says, I asked a question several weeks ago about the visitor section at Razorback Stadium, and if you had any info on how that came to be. A lot of schools put their visitors in the upper deck. That's a good question.
Originally, there was no upper deck, and for years and years and years, as far back as I can find anybody that will tell me, the visitor section has always been on the northeast side of the lower stadium, and again, there were no upper decks, so there was no way to put them in the upper deck. When they put up the upper deck, you have to, in the SEC, if the other team asks you, you are required to give at least 8,000 tickets to the opposing team. That doesn't happen to most teams. But when Alabama, for instance, comes in, you got to give them 8,000 tickets. They travel that well. So if an Alabama, for instance, comes in and wants 8,000 tickets, yeah, they stick some of them in the upper deck above where the other guys are down on the lower deck. But that's been that way forever, and it did not change much when they added the upper deck. It just gave them more flexibility when the other team asked for 8,000 seats.
Oh, there you go. Well, Razor Alex 88 says, my best friend just asked me how an FCS team makes the jump into FBS. Now, I am curious how it works. What all goes into the process of going from the FCS to the FBS?
Okay, we've got graphics on this, and we'll go to those graphics and show you the process. An average attendance of 15,000 for 2 consecutive football seasons is required. Compete in a minimum of 16 varsity sports with a minimum split of 6 men and 8 women's sports. That may sound like a lot, but men and women's track is actually counted as 6 sports. Cross country, indoor, and outdoor track are 3 separate sports. A minimum of 200 full scholarships or $4 million in scholarships committed at any given time. And finally, with regard to football, you must have a minimum of 76 players on your football team on full scholarship every season. Now, Liberty, since we were talking about them, they made the jump in 2018. And I think there's what team? I got them written down.
Oh, James Madison,
James
right?
Madison, yeah.
Yeah, James Madison.
James Madison is going through that process now. They will be over into the BCS in 2023.
Yeah, officially, because they kind of jumped in football already, but.
And then there are 2 other schools that I know of that are, I'm not going to talk about them, but there's 2 other schools that have just started the process. But that's how you do it. It has a lot to do with attendance at your games and how many scholarships you offer and how much money you contribute to those scholarships, and then how many football scholarships. They want you to be in tune with most other BCS schools.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Lost in Swine says, you mentioned the NCAA won't be around in 2 years. How do you know this? Who or what would replace them? What kind of teeth would this new governing body have as it pertains to NIL and violations?
Okay, this all started back in the COVID year. There was an NCAA, there was a panel of athletic directors and what's called college academic experts. And it all came about as a result of what the NCAA did in COVID. Some people may have forgotten this, but the NCAA wanted to eliminate the entire football season. There was all kinds of evidence at that time that COVID did not spread outdoors, it spread indoors. So there was a real anger on the part of a lot of these BCS schools. That's their major revenue support. source. And they were like, what, are you crazy? Do you represent us anymore? Saying something stupid like that? So what happened was the SEC and the ACC got together, the two commissioners said, we're not doing this. We realize we're technically under NCAA control during the regular season, but we do control our own playoff, and we're not doing this. We're playing. And then once they said they were playing, the Big 12 did, and then eventually the other two conferences caved in, and we got this compromise where they allowed reduced seating. Again, the whole thing was premature on the part of the NCAA's part. They should have known that COVID did not spread outdoors. There wasn't a danger to these players or to these fans who were going into the game or the players out there on the field. So that started the ball. And then you ended up with the decision on NIL, which was a result of a lawsuit, which was the NCAA's fault. And then what they did after they lost it, they just pouted and didn't do much about it. Put up a couple of basic rules and then didn't even enforce the rules. So these athletic directors as BCS schools had it with these guys. And so then you started seeing things like the Knight report, which was a long, I think, year-and-a-half process where they looked at all these issues and examined the possibility of coming up with a new organization, and that's what the Knight report suggested, do this. Then they started polling athletic directors, and around the country it was over 60% said, yeah, we want to do it. They're mad at the NCAA. They've had it with these guys. They don't like the enforcement. And so let's look at some of the things that, if this happens, and I think it's going to happen within 2 to 4 years, that they're going to do it for, to restructure the NIL and make, one of the things that they may end up doing is giving payments directly to the athlete through NIL. Instead of you doing your individual deal. The school, each school has a given amount of money to give to these athletes, and they give it to all of them as employees of the university, because technically they are. They're playing football for an organization that represents the university, a football team. They're spending 20 hours a week doing that, so they're technically part-time employees. So why not pay them like they're employees? You give them their scholarship and all that stuff, but give them $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 a year extra for the work they're doing as part-time employees. So that's one of the things. Then number two, modify the transfer portal. Now, I don't think there's going to be huge changes there, because the issue all along was, hey, you're saying that we can't transfer without sitting out, but a coach can do that. Okay, but what happens to a coach if he leaves and breaks his contract? He has to give money back to the school he's leaving. Well, what if you did that with the portal? What if you said, okay, we spent this much money on you last year. If you want to leave, you're free to go, but you signed an NIL agreement, or not an NIL, an LOI agreement. You signed that, and guess what? We want our money back that we put into you. So if you want to leave, fine, but give us the money back. That's what coaches do. Now, I don't know that that's going to be one of the changes, but I've heard that talked about. Okay. But I do think they're going to make some modifications to the portal to make, mainly to make players not just jump without thinking, to make them, stop and think a little bit before they do it. So that's one of the things. Then number three, conference realignment to manage it better. Here's what happens right now. You just get blindsided. A conference gets blindsided. The Big 12 suddenly finds out Texas and Oklahoma are leaving. Pac-12 finds out that UCLA and USC are leaving. If you do this whole restructuring thing, you're probably going to reduce the number of BCS schools anyway, and it's not going to be the BCS anymore. You don't need that. I'd say call it Division I again. But you reduce the number of teams involved, and when you do that, you restructure conferences to be more geographic in nature. It won't be totally that way. But if you had schools closer to each other, then it lowers travel costs, which means the players don't travel as far, it's not as tiring, and you allow fans to travel.
Yeah.
So a new organization could allow a realignment of conferences. You might end up with 3 divisions within the SEC. But within your division, you're all close to each other.
Yeah, we've talked about this.
And then if you end up traveling, it would be more in your non-conference games. So I think and then finally, the last thing we're talking about is increased TV revenue.
Yeah.
Now, the way you do that is real simple. You reduce the number of schools that are involved. And what does that do? That means, it makes the TV people really happy, instead of Alabama playing Middle Tennessee State, Alabama has to play Texas, like they did this year.
Yeah.
USC, a team like that. You get these conference matchups between recognizable Power 5 teams right now. You're not going to call it Power 5 anymore, but and you eliminate all these games with mid-majors. So Arkansas doesn't play Missouri State. Missouri State gave Arkansas all they wanted, but you wouldn't play a team like that. You, instead of playing, for instance, instead of playing South Florida, Arkansas might play Florida State.
Yeah.
That's a bigger matchup, draws bigger on TV, brings bigger money, and the TV people are happy because they don't have these dud games anymore. The fans are happy because I'm not going to tune in. How many times have you seen a fan go, oh, I got to tune in and watch my team beat the crud out of these guys?
No.
It's just not as interesting. So if every game, every week is interesting, you make more money, the schools make more money, the TV people make more money, and that's the final reason why they would do this.
Okay.
So I think it's going to happen within 4 years.
Well, there you go. Well, let's head to basketball now, where Eddie Lynn wants to know, what are your memories, oh, I love this question, of Ron Huery, the Hog basketball player who passed away over the weekend? I always liked him as a player.
Well, he was the first of the Memphis connection, and he came along at a time when Nolan was just trying to get things going. He'd almost got fired that second year. Now the third year, he really needs to do something. And Ron came along, and he was really a good player, and he kind of gave everybody hope. And then because of that, Nolan was able to go into Memphis and get Todd Day, for instance, and then the team started rolling, and he meshed with those other guys. Mayday and the Big O is what I used to call them. But that's what led to the first final, and Ron got to go to the first Final Four under Nolan. They went to 2 more Final Fours. And I'm not sure any of that would have happened without Ron Huery. Now, the problem he had was he grew up in a rough neighborhood in Memphis, and he got off the rails after he left Arkansas. Really got into some trouble. His life was bad, but he turned it around. And he got himself going again, and he went around trying to help other people that were in that situation. And just at the start of this last football season, he was recognized as he was put into the Razorback Hall of Honor. Yeah. And he was a few blocks from here over at the Walton Arts Center and talking about, and I loved his speech because he just said, I don't have a speech, I'm speaking from the heart.
I love that.
And the speech lasted about 20 seconds, and it consisted of, I want to pay tribute to my teammates who have passed away, because there were a couple of them, and then he said, basically, being a Razorback's the best thing that ever happened in my life. And how could you not love a guy like that? I really regret that he's not going to be able to continue the stuff that he was doing, because he was really making a difference. What a guy. I really liked Ron Huery.
Yeah, definitely. And hope rest in peace, and we reach out, good
to
thoughts
his family,
to his family
and all that knew him, his teammates.
Yeah.
It's a big blow to all of them.
Yeah, really sad. Pigs Feet asked, did the exhibition game with Texas cost us 5-star recruit Ron Holland? If so, this was a bad idea to play it.
I don't do recruiting, but I know some people that do. And I was told that the tip-off on this was the day before they played that exhibition, Arkansas offered a kid very similar to Ron Holland out of California. I think they knew. That's what I'm being told. They knew what was going to happen there. That was not a consideration in scheduling this game, and it did not cost them Ron Holland. I think they knew he was going to Texas. Forget about Ron Holland. Muss recruits well enough that we're not going to worry about Ron Holland.
Yeah, forget about him. Get him out of your head.
He's a Longhorn. Why do you care about him now?
We're done. We're done talking about him. And our final question of the day is, Go Get Your Shine Box wants to know, do you know what the plans are for Bud Walton Arena? I heard renovations were in the works, but now there's a thread going on Hogville about rumors of a new arena being built. Are these just rumors, or is this an actual option being discussed? Okay,
the guy that started that is a moderator on Hogville. He's got good inside information from time to time. That's not what I'm being told, but what he basically said was that the university was trying to get money to renovate, which was going to cost almost $100 million, and the Walton family told them, well, we'll give you the money it takes, because it's only going to cost a little bit more than that to build a new arena. I find that hard to believe. Construction costs of a new arena similar to what they have now, I think it'd be $300 million. So I don't know about this $120 million to build a new one. Supposedly it was going to be moved out on the Agri farm closer to I-49 for traffic, to make the traffic easier to get in and out. You're going to move that thing 2 miles from the main part of the campus and just tell students to walk out there that don't have access to a car just so fans can drive in there easier. I hate that idea. Here's what I'm told, that the University is actively looking. They tried to get enough separate donations to pay for a renovation. They've been trying to do this for 2 years. And what they finally concluded is they need a major corporate donor. That's how you do everything these days. If you want a facility, you gotta get some big bucks from a corporation. So they've basically let it be known, hey, Walton family, if you want to help us, do it. But if you don't, there's a real good chance that if we find another corporate donor, the name Bud Walton is going off of that arena, and it's going to be whatever that corporate entity is.
That's what happens.
So it'll be up to them, I guess, if that happens. But that's what I've heard is happening, and I just can't tell you how stupid I think the idea would be of building a new one out on the Agri farm. I hate that idea.
That doesn't.
And I don't really think a lot needs to be done to that arena. There's nothing really wrong with it. You might widen the concourses. There was, back when Jeff Long didn't do much I liked, but he had a concept that was drawn up about improving Bud Walton, and they took the brick out on that second level. Right now you've got patterned brick, or it's an octagon shape. And they took that out and extended it outward and made it glass. Ooh. And what that would do is widen the concourse, where instead of walking along the edge and having one concession stand here and then another one down there, you have the concession stands in the middle and you've got lines on both sides.
I like that.
And it makes it more roomy to walk in there so fans aren't bumping into each other. I like that idea. I like the idea of building a tunnel under Nolan Richardson Drive, and so the players can go back and forth between their practice facility and the arena without going outside in winter weather, bad weather, whatever, rain, snow, or whatever. I like that idea. And I'm hearing they might put some loge boxes in there. That what you would do there is go into the regular seating area, maybe up top, maybe underneath the sky boxes, right under. You would have some loge boxes, which are outside, but a bigger area where you've got special food that would be brought in and all that.
That'd be cool.
That wouldn't reduce the seating too much, so I wouldn't mind that. But the idea that you're going to put sky boxes up there in the upper deck and do away with that, I hate that idea too. So they're not going to ask me, but it doesn't stop me from giving my opinion because this is Ask Mike.
Yeah, but exactly. It is Ask Mike, and we love it that it is Ask Mike. That's going to do it for this week's episode. We'll see you next week to answer more of your questions.